Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all learned this truth from who do well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the elect. Unto you I say shalom. Coming to you back with another Let's Do Spirit, and I'm going to title this one, The Heathens Will Go Into Slavery. Because in the kingdom of heaven that's going to be established upon the planet Earth, that majority of the world, especially through Christianity, has made to believe that the whole world is going to partake in rulership in the kingdom of heaven, which that's not true. Yeah, all these different nations are going to be in the kingdom of heaven because you got Donald Trump that said a couple weeks ago he don't think that he's going to get into the kingdom of heaven, but even Donald Trump's going to be in the kingdom of heaven, but he's not going to be ruling because right now the Edomites, the so-called white people, they're in their kingdom, in their heaven, so to speak. But once this system, this kingdom collapses and Edom gets taken down, and that's when the next kingdom is going to rule upon the planet Earth, because the nation of Israel is going to be the next superpower. Not no China, not no Russia. And Israel, starting with Yahushai, the only begotten son, the rest of the 144,000, which is all prophets, all men of the nation of Israel, of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and also Israelite foreigners that may look like the other heathen nations, but their lineage goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the rest of the elect, the large multitude of believers, help, friends of the prophets, these are the ones that are going to be the governing body in the kingdom of heaven that's right around the corner. That's going to be here on the planet Earth, not in the floating in the clouds with babies with angel wings like Christianity has made to believe. All these people know the kingdom of heaven is going to be on the planet Earth, and also is going to be built up by these heathens, because the rest of these heathen nations, these so-called white people, these so-called Chinese, so-called Japanese, so-called Arabians, so-called Africans, so-called Hawaiian, Samoans, so on and so forth, they're going to be in the kingdom, but they're not going to be ruling. First, they're going to have to serve 1,000 long, hardcore years slavery, and then they'll be allowed to go back to their respective lands, whatever landmass they had before, or whatever Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is going to allot them, give them, as a piece of land. But the so-called white people, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is going to completely do away with the nation of Edom, which are the so-called white people today. But ultimately they still have to serve that 1,000 long hardcore year slavery, and then they'll be allowed to benefit from the nation of Israel ruling upon the planet Earth. But first, we are going to have slaves in the kingdom. And ultimately all these different religions, Christianity, Roman Catholicism, and even these other Israelite camps, they don't teach about the heathen going into slavery. A lot of them teach that they're going to be joint rulers, joint heirs with the nation of Israel, which that's not true, because they have to pay for what they did to the nation of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. This is Revelation chapter 13, verse 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. And who are the main ones who have put the nation of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, are the so-called white people, the Edomites, Edom. Yeah, all these different nations have gotten a piece, of the nation of Israel, like it says in the book of Maccabees. But right now, who's the main ones who has us in slavery? Devices, crafty plans to kill us, to do away with us, to fill us up with diseases and pestilences and different plagues. Ultimately these Edomites, these so-called white people. And you have a lot of these Edomites today, to claim that, I ain't put y'all in slavery. It was my great grandfathers. But no, their great grandfather coming back today in the reincarnation. So Yahweh Bashim Shah hasn't forgotten what these devils did, and really all these different heathen nations, they still got to pay. So ultimately all these Edomites that are going to get put to death, they're going to have to serve slavery. And then you're going to have the first fruits of slavery, which is going to be the rich elite banking families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. Those are going to be the first fruits of slavery. That's why Yahweh Bashim Shah is going to allow them to be preserved, in the bunkers. But, they're only going to be there for so long till the elect are going to come down and pull these damn devils out those bunkers and put them in chains and shackles. That's what these heathens, got to look forward to, is slavery. Is Isaiah 14 and verse 1. For the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And this hasn't happened yet, because we know the people over there in the Holy Land, the tiny caps, the tiny hats, they're not the real people of the Lord, because really they're only claiming two tribes, Judah, Benjamin, Levi. Where are the rest of the tribes? Where's the northern kingdom? And ultimately that hasn't happened yet. That's going to happen when the elect, starting with the elect, get delivered from the nuclear destruction of America, and wherever the elect are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And then they come down, and then they get put back in the land. But that hasn't happened yet. And the strangers shall be joined unto them. That's not talking about no damn heathens. That's talking about the Israelite foreigners, because the whole nation of Israel has been scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So you're going to have Israelites that look like these heathen nations getting delivered up. But ultimately they're Israelite, because the law, statutes, and commandments wasn't given unto no other nation but the nation of Israel. Verse 2, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And that's what's going to happen to all these different heathen nations, starting with the Edomites, the Esau, Edom, the so-called white people, along with these other nations, the so-called Arabs, so-called Chinese, and the rest of these heathen nations. That's what they got looking forward to, because of what they did to the nation of Israel, to Yasharallah, to the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Brought us over here, or brought the Southern Kingdom, in the transatlantic slave trade. Came over here to the the Native Americans, and the so-called Native Americans, so-called Mexicans, so-called Central Americans, Southern Americans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, and put us all in slavery, put us all in shackles, and shipped us around throughout the four corners of the earth. So ultimately these heathens, they have to pay for what they did. They're not going to get away. And that's comfort, because before we came into this truth, we seen how these heathens were thriving, and like, damn, we're slaves. We got to go to these jobs, pay taxes. Like, is it? Are they ever gonna be brought down to a low state? And the answer is yes. Right now, they really mainly the Edomites, but just like it says in the parable of Lazarus, the dog licked his wounds. That's going into these different heathen nations, coming into America and establishing their businesses, liquor stores, donut shops, Chinese food, nail shops, massage parlors, dry cleaners. Jake don't get that. If you try to get a loan at a bank, a business loan, they're not going to give it to you. But Let these heathens come to America and ask for a loan, man. They're going to get it at the snap of a finger. Verse 3, and it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord Yahweh Bashmal Shai shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. And right now, the nation of Israel is still in bondage. We're still in slavery. But it's not forever. It's not eternal. We know that it is almost up. That it's about to be over. And once that happens, that's it. The elect are going to be delivered. America's going to be destroyed. Esau, Edom's going to be brought down low. They're going to go into slavery along with these other heathen nations. And that's when we're going to have true rest. Lord willing to be a part of the elect. That's when the rest of these heathen nations are going to start serving in slavery. These other heathen nations, excluding the Edomites, will be allowed to go back to the lands, but they're going to have to get their ass kicked. They're going to have to get put to death. They're going to have to be corrected with the laws, statutes, and commandments. This is Psalms chapter 2 and verse 1. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Verse 2, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against the anointed, saying, verse 3, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. And that's what these wicked elite, starting with the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Bill Gates, and all these technocrats, they're trying to, they know what they're, in this. They know that ultimately they're going to go into slavery. That's why they're trying so hard through the left-hand means, through AI technology, to try to gain immortality on the left-hand side. Transhumanism. But ultimately, Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is not going to allow them, because in their mind, they think that they're going to get away with it. Think that they're going to get away from Yahweh Bashmiel Shai's will. That they're going to do their own thing and be immortal on the left-hand side through technological means. But it's not going to happen. It's all vain. That's why it says in verse 1, why do the people imagine a vain thing? It's vain to think that you're going to get away from Yahweh Bashmiel Shai's judgment. Verse 4, he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. And that's what Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is doing. By sending out his prophets, his mouthpiece, telling these heathens and these Edomites and these wicked elite, these Rothschilds, these Rockefellers, they're not going to be successful with their NWO plan. They're not going to get away. That ultimately Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is going to put a stop to their plan. When he's about to fill his belly, that's when Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is going to rain that great wrath on him. Verse 5, then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Verse 6, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. Because whose kingdom is going to be set up upon the planet Earth? It's going to be Yahweh Shai's kingdom. Yahweh Shai's kingdom of heaven upon the planet Earth. On earth as it is in heaven. Verse 7, I will declare the decree. The Lord Yahweh Bashmiel Shai hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. And who is the only begotten son of Yahweh? Yahweh Shai, the only begotten son. And in his rightful inheritance to rule over these heathens, to rule over the entire earth. But along with that, he's going to have his joint heirs, which are the 144,000. Verse 8, ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. So ultimately, Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is going to take these heathens into slavery. He's going to take these, the rest of these other nations, into slavery. You're going to have to help, build up the kingdom for 1,000 years. And then they're going to have to, these Edomites, they're going to be done away with, after 1,000 long, hardcore years of slavery, pursuant to Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 18. But the rest of these nations, they're going to get their ass kicked for 1,000 years, But then they'll be allowed to go back to their lands and benefit from the kingdom of heaven of the nation of Israel. But that's pretty much the point. I pray this is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who I learned this truth from and who are doing well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the elect. Unto you I say Shalom.